There comes a moment in every powerful life when a choice must be made. Rebuild from ash, or be broken forever. Not when you're celebrated, not when you're rising, but in the wreckage, after the betrayal, the collapse, the failure that exposes everything you thought was strong. That is when strategy truly begins, not in victory, but in the ruin, when all illusions have died and nothing remains to protect your pride. Machiavelli never dressed this moment in comfort. He wrote for rulers in exile, for leaders facing execution, for kings whose crowns were already slipping. His message was brutal in its simplicity. If you're weak, you're prey. If you're emotional, you're bait. And if you reconstruct yourself carelessly, you don't rise. You rebuild your prison. So, how does a strategist rise from ruin? 1. The death of the old self. The first step is demolition. A ruthless strategist sheds their former identity like a serpent abandoning dead skin. There is no mourning, no nostalgia. The self that was betrayed, dismissed, humiliated wasn't made for war. It was built for approval, and Machiavelli would issue the warning. The moment you cling to that version, your enemies have already won. The strategist knows transformation isn't healing, it's design. You're not returning to who you were, you're constructing who must exist to dominate what comes next. 2. Cold detachment. Rebuilding begins not with action but subtraction. The strategist retreats, not to escape but to assess. This isn't therapy, it's tactical silence. All opinions are removed, all distractions cut. You sit in the stillness, not to recover but to plan the next strike. And in that silence you ask, where were the fractures? Which weaknesses were exploited? What boundaries were too soft? What tolerance too high? This isn't journaling. It's intelligence gathering. You don't write your emotions, you document your failures like an analyst reviewing a battlefield. Because if you don't study the cracks, you'll rebuild with the same weak foundation and collapse again. 3. Power zones mapping. Now the strategist isolates power, not imagined power, not approval, actual leverage. Ask, what can I say no to without consequence? What resources do I control? What can I walk away from that others cannot? That's your power zone. A strategist doesn't build a life around their desires. They build around their leverage. If your edge is persuasion, forget likability. If it's logic, stop performing charisma. Power is not becoming everything, it's becoming sharp, specific, a weapon. 4. Resource alignment. A strategist protects energy like a sovereign kingdom. There are no leaks, no open gates, no parasites. Every person, habit, addiction, or comfort that weakens you, it's cut. Not eventually, immediately. Most people fail here. They try to rebuild while keeping poison close. The strategist doesn't. They cut sentiment. They prune the garden until only precision remains. 5. The new image, designed for power. After demolition and clearing come construction. But the new image isn't designed to impress, it's built to intimidate. Not with bravado, but with stillness. The return isn't loud, it's unnerving. No explanations, no apologies, just presence, sharpness, control. You don't tell the world you've changed, you let them feel it. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must appear virtuous, but only when it serves his purpose." Your new identity is a tool, not a truth. 6. Ambiguity as strategy. Power thrives in ambiguity. The weak overshare during reinvention, hoping to be understood. The strategist speaks rarely, reveals little, and moves silently. Plans are concealed, wins are delayed, questions are answered with smiles. This isn't isolation, it's selective clarity. Let others guess, let them underestimate. Machiavelli warned, appear harmless until the blade is already drawn. 7. Psychological firewall. Now you build the wall. The strategist entertains no draining conversations, no pointless arguments, no attempts to explain the transformation. There's no performance here, no validation hunt. Every second spent defending your path is a second stolen from sharpening your edge. The ruthless understand this. Silence is not weakness, it's focus. 8. Single weapon mastery. Every strategist chooses one lethal edge and sharpens it to surgical precision, not 10. 1. Charisma, logic, influence, presence. Every legend was known for one thing done unforgettably well. That is the cornerstone of your reconstruction. You become known not for your range, but for your sharpness. A scalpel, not a Swiss Army knife. 9. Deliberate image engineering. Your return to the world is slow, measured, symbolic. You don't announce your rebirth. You enter a room and the atmosphere shifts. No unnecessary smiles, no emotional giveaways, just a presence that changes temperature. This creates mystery, and mystery creates control. The moment you explain yourself, you give people something to attack. The moment you withhold, you force them to adapt. 10th, strategic visibility. You do not isolate completely, that draws suspicion. You reveal, but selectively. Wins, not methods. You let people see outcomes, not process. You appear open, but control what they see. You create the illusion of transparency while hiding the strategy. That is Machiavellian virtue, admirable but untouchable. 11th, reorganized relationships. A strategist remembers who helped, who watched, who mocked, who vanished. But they do not seek revenge with noise. They reposition. The loyal move closer, but not too close. The disloyal are deleted, not with anger, but silence. And the powerful, you don't flatter them. You become their mirror, their competition, their intrigue. 12th, constant strategic evolution. The strategist never finishes the rebuild, because war never ends. The battlefield changes, so you do too. You begin scanning constantly. What skills are gaining value? What tactics are outdated? What threats are rising, and before the wave hits, you're already riding the next one. While others are reacting, you're sculpting. 13. Quiet obsession. Every true strategist nurtures a secret weapon, a private obsession, something refined in solitude for years. It's not a hobby. It's a hidden advantage, designed for the exact crisis no one sees coming. And when that moment arrives, you don't appear ready. You appear inevitable. 14. Emotional armor. The world doesn't care that you rebuilt. And the moment your presence rises, some will test your emotional reflexes, insults, jealousy, provocation. That's why you need a calibrated response system. They mock, you smile. They question you, you redirect. They provoke, you mirror until they squirm. You're no longer reactive. You're not even defensive. You're dominant through control. 15th, permanent state of command. You no longer rebuild just to survive. You rebuild to become the environment. Your every movement is deliberate. Waking early, not for health, but for ownership. Speaking slowly, not for calmness, but for psychological pressure. Silence, not for mystique, but to force others to over-explain. These aren't habits, they are architecture. 16. The cold law of invisibility. The strategist doesn't rush the return, they remain invisible until the blade is sharp. Why? Because exposure during the rebuild invites resistance. You don't show them the climb, you let them wake up and realize you're already above them. 17. Leverage over loyalty. Loyalty is fluid. Leverage is not. In your new world, you build assets that cannot be ignored. Rare knowledge, irreplaceable skill, controlled access. You don't beg for loyalty, you engineer necessity, and necessity bends even the disloyal into submission. 18. Information filtration. Most people consume content for comfort. You consume for control. Every idea must pass a test. Does this sharpen my edge or dilute it? Does this increase my leverage or distract from it? You don't browse, you extract. 19. Controlled coldness. You appear polite, but beneath it, observation, calculation, silence. You're not cruel, you're distant by design, because comfort invites attachment. And attachment without utility is liability. If comfort dulls your edge, it must go. 20. Rehearsed resilience. You simulate setbacks before they strike. You ask yourself, what if I'm betrayed again? Mocked again? Dismissed again? Then you rehearse the response, so when it comes, you don't flinch. You respond like it was expected because it was. 21. The return. You re-enter not to prove, but to disrupt. Your presence shifts atmospheres, not from arrogance, but from engineered gravity. People don't remember what you say. They remember how powerless they feel around you. You walk like the threat they didn't prepare for. 22nd, permanent refinement. You never rebuild the same self twice. The ego wants to freeze, to declare, this is who I am now. But the strategist doesn't freeze. He flows. He adjusts before the next blow. He evolves before the enemy even sees the change. Reinvention becomes rhythm. Adapting becomes instinct. Comes 23. The 5 non-negotiables of the rebuilt strategist. 1. No more public pain. Your suffering is no longer public theater. It is data. It is fuel. It is yours alone. 2nd. Lethal circle only. No more loyalty to weakness, only to clarity, silence, and strategy. 3rd. Emotion is now filtered. You don't feel first. You observe, interrogate, then decide. 4th. Speech is now functional. You don't talk to connect. You talk to shift, to reposition, to implant. 5. You rebuild endlessly. You never declare arrival. You operate in constant quiet refinement, ready before the next war starts. Final thought. You are no longer the version of yourself that begged to be seen, that explained pain for pity, that forgave without recalculating cost. That self was a bridge to this one. But now you tilt the world slightly every time you enter a room, not because you shout, but because you rebuilt with silence, strategy, and psychological fire. That is the Machiavellian way.